Great, lovely. My essay was exploring the environmental city stresses that cause harm to our health and looking at creating a city as a habitat that supports our optimum health. As Joyce just explained, that COVID has been a real awakening in revaluing parks, understanding the importance of having close and easy access, and how COVID and lockdown exposed the fact that not everyone does have equality of access, particularly within cities, and people on lower incomes and ethnic minorities tend to be worse affected. We're living in areas with less access to green space and less tree coverage in our streets, which exacerbates the impact of city stresses, noise pollution, air pollution, and also the visual pollution of the cityscape. The extent of the problem is that these underlying factors which have removed nature and introduced stresses is impacting our health, not just our physical health, but also our psychological health. The impact of air pollution, noise pollution, visual pollution affects our physiology. So as well as increasing health problems within our cardiovascular and nervous systems, it's affecting our neuropsychiatry. The impact of noise affects our autonomic nervous system, which evokes our fight, flight, and freeze response. It's a stress response that's designed to help us respond to our perception of a threat or the reality of a threat. Once that threat has passed, our system should then calm down and we should go back to a state which we would call living. What happens in cities is the constant noise, the constant signs and stimuli that we see engage our brains, and our bodies respond to these signals as if they are a threat. And it means that we're constantly on alert. Our systems never have a chance to calm down. And when we're constantly on alert, adrenaline pumping through our body, this can trigger an emotional trauma. So there's a very real health consequence of the stresses that we've allowed to become normal within our cities. There's been a very unhealthy acceptance of air pollution, noise from traffic, noise from sirens, the competing demand of different signs and light stimulus that our brains are having to interpret. We're accepting this as normal. And the impact this has on us is in huge contrast to the impacts I'm sure we're all aware we have in nature, where it calms us, it lowers our heart rate. We're able to really connect and live in the moment and feel a sense of belonging. So we've ended up creating for ourselves a habitat that's harming us. And my argument is we've created a public health crisis, and periods like the pandemic really expose the lack of safety in our habitat. Just like wildlife, when our habitats are tampered with, we suffer, our health suffers, we become stressed, and this has become a public health crisis. In the 1800s, Victorian engineers and reformers were wrestling with issues of sanitation that were becoming a crisis, impacting our health. At the time, that crisis was open sewers, which was contaminating water, contaminating air. For us today, our sanitation crisis is not just bacteria and virus, but it's also the pollutants and the stresses in our cities. And a response to these stresses is to create more wildlife habitats, that the impact of more trees, more wildlife is going to soften and absorb the noise and the air pollutants. But rather than having patches of park and green spaces, we need to understand the city is a habitat where 83% of us live in the UK, and to look at the habitat as a whole and assess whether it's suitable for humans, for our health. Are cities as a habitat going to be able to support optimum health in the way nature supports our optimum health? Cities at the moment evoke a response in us which is comparable to when we're in a survival mode, raising our adrenaline, raising our cortisol. We become emotionally detached and withdrawn, so we can just cope in that moment. We tend to become more irritable, more stressed, more angry. Where when we're in nature, there's a correlation to the psychological state where we're living. We're more relaxed, we're more at ease, our heart rate is lower, our cortisol is lower, we have better sleep, better rest, better relaxation. We need to look at how cities can be spaces where we live rather than survive. And we need to be looking at the habitat as a whole, not just isolated pockets. And this needs to be done as a public health response to make sure there's equitable access and equitable health. Thank you.